For decades, Ron Howard seemed untouchable, the calm, smiling Hollywood icon who somehow stayed spotless while others fell apart. His reputation, picture perfect. His career, almost too clean to be real. But behind that polished smile, pressure built up and quiet memories stayed locked away, waiting to burst out. While everyone cheered for his flawless image, everything changed after the heartbreaking loss of Rob Reiner. The industry went silent, but Ron didn't. He dropped the Hollywood filter and started talking straight from the heart about rivalries that no one ever dared mention, emotions he'd kept hidden for years, and a rare kind of respect that never made it into glossy magazine interviews. That raw honesty shook people to the core. Suddenly fans realized Ron and Rob shared something much deeper than fame or friendship. They were two souls shaped by the same brutal spotlight. Not just co-workers but brothers in spirit who carried the same creative fire and the same heavy expectations. Born March 1, 1954 in Duncan, Oklahoma, Ron didn't chase the spotlight, it was waiting for him before he could even walk. His parents, actor Rance Howard and actress Jean Spiegel Howard, built a home where imagination ran wild, but rules stayed firm. Discipline was constant, dreams were demanded, and uncertainty hung over every script read at the dinner table. By just 18 months old, Ron was already in Frontier Woman. Barely able to talk, yet already part of a Hollywood story that would never hit pause. When the Howard family packed up and moved to California in the late 1950s, Ron's idea of a normal childhood disappeared overnight. Playgrounds turned into casting offices, bikes got swapped for scripts, and the neighborhood streets were replaced by sound stages. Dinner tables doubled as study desks, and tutors hovered nearby while cameras rolled, every moment part of a non-stop production. Ron would later call it a golden cage, safe from the world but painfully lonely inside. That loneliness hit hard in 1960, when 6-year-old Ron became America's favorite kid, as Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. The world saw a smiling boy with perfect manners, but behind that grin was a quiet kid finishing homework under harsh studio lights while canned laughter filled the air around him. He was adored on screen but trapped off it, living a life that felt borrowed, not his own. Meanwhile, across town, Rob Reiner was fighting the same silent battle, another Hollywood kid raised in the spotlight, learning too early that fame lifts you up but keeps you boxed in. Both boys carried that invisible weight, and as years passed, it only grew heavier. When The Andy Griffith Show wrapped in 1968, Ron was just 14, but he had already spent 8 years inside a fantasy world that millions watched but only he truly lived. His school days were split between classroom lessons and camera rehearsals. His lunch breaks weren't spent laughing with friends, but sitting with sound guys, lighting crews, and Hollywood veterans twice his age. One unforgettable moment came during the Music Man shoot. 8-year-old Ron froze mid-dance and whispered, "I can't do it." Shirley Jones stepped in like an angel, calming him down while the crew quietly adjusted everything to protect his image. The audience saw confidence, but behind the lens was a boy fighting back panic. That moment stuck with Ron. It built the empathy he later shared with Rob Reiner, because both knew the painful truth behind the glamour of child stardom hides the pressure, the isolation, and the desperate struggle just to breathe under the weight of perfection. Ron's calm, collected vibe became his signature and his shield. Every smile, every quiet nod wasn't just charm, it was a mask hiding deep anxiety that few ever saw. While Rob Reiner made waves with his bold energy and loud confidence, Ron played the opposite game, watching, learning, and keeping his cool no matter what chaos hit. But that calm cracked in 1974, when Happy Days came along. At just 19, Ron became Richie Cunningham, the ultimate all-American boy next door. But behind the scenes, that perfect role turned into a cage made of fame and fake smiles. The show's sweet nostalgia didn't match the chaos of the real world outside. The 1970s were all about rebellion, protest, and questioning everything. But Happy Days lived in a bubble that ignored it all. Ron wanted more. He wanted honesty. He even begged ABC to let the show include a Vietnam War storyline to mirror the pain people were actually living through. But when the network shot him down without a thought, he felt erased, trapped inside a character that wasn't him, while his real life stayed frozen in time. That frustration became fuel for something bigger. If acting couldn't let him tell the truth, then directing would. It wasn't some starry-eyed dream. It was a survival move, his escape plan from the fake world of sitcom smiles. His turning point came in 1977, when Roger Corman tossed him a wild offer: star in Eat My Dust, and in return get to direct his own movie. Ron jumped at the chance. He teamed up with his dad to co-write Grand Theft Auto, shot it on a tiny $62,000 budget, crashed nearly 70 cars, and somehow turned it into a $15 million smash hit. Hollywood couldn't ignore him after that. From there, Ron started crafting a directing career built on truth, whether through the magic of Splash, the heart of Parenthood, or the jaw-dropping realism of Apollo 13. Apollo 13 in 1995 wasn't just another movie for Ron, it was a full-blown mission. He didn't just want it to look real, he needed it to be real. Ron pushed himself and his crew past every limit imaginable, shooting over 600 zero-gravity sequences, each lasting just 23 seconds. He rebuilt mission control using actual NASA panels and pushed through brutal 18-hour days until his body finally gave out from exhaustion. When he came back to set after collapsing, the crew greeted him wearing shirts that said Mission Control, a quiet, powerful sign that they had his back no matter what. That moment hit him deep. He realized that chasing perfection can quietly swallow you whole. It's the kind of truth Rob Reiner had understood long before his passing, and one that Ron was just beginning to face. Back in 1991, when Ron's career was exploding and his daughter Jocelyn had just been born, he took on a 6-month shoot in Ireland for Far and Away. It was supposed to be another career milestone, but when he came home, his baby didn't even recognize him. His wife Cheryl didn't have to say much. Her tired silence said everything. That moment crushed him. He promised himself he'd never again let ambition rob him of family time. But some habits die hard. During the exhausting reshoots for Cinderella Man in 2005, Ron slipped into his old pattern, disappearing for months while his kids grew up without him seeing it. That reality hit harder than any Hollywood failure ever could. He finally had to face the belief he'd carried since childhood, that he always had to say yes, always had to outdo himself just to prove he belonged. That drive made him a legend, but it also left behind guilt that no award could erase. And by 2025, standing in the gym of John Burroughs High School, the same place where he'd first met Cheryl, Ron broke down in front of everyone at their 50th wedding anniversary. He looked at his family and said he'd trade every Oscar, every blockbuster, every single hit, just to reclaim the time he lost with his kids. It was raw and unfiltered truth, and that's exactly why Rob Reiner's death hit Ron so hard. It wasn't just about losing a friend, it was about seeing himself reflected in that loss. These were two men molded by the same spotlight, both knowing the secret cost of success that no one ever talks about. Ron's grief reached deeper than anyone expected. It stretched back to memories of his younger brother Clint Howard. To the world, Clint was that unforgettable character actor with the kind of face you never forget. But to Ron, he was the only person who truly got it. What it meant to grow up on sets before you even understood who you were. The two of them earned paychecks before they could spell, memorized lines before they could even make sense of them. They weren't just brothers, they were co-workers, teammates and survivors of a childhood spent performing instead of playing. That's what made Rob Reiner's passing cut even deeper. Rob wasn't just another Hollywood name, he was a mirror. Where Ron was measured and quiet, Rob was bold and loud. Where Ron was cautious, Rob was fearless, but both of them were chasing the same thing, the truth, even when it hurt. When Ron finally spoke about Rob's death, his voice cracked, not with some rehearsed Hollywood grief, but with the pain of a man staring straight at how fragile life really is. Their bond had always been complicated, woven from respect, rivalry, admiration, and an emotional distance that neither ever fully broke through. There was tension between them, sure, but it never turned ugly. No feuds, no public clashes, just that quiet, unspoken competition that pushed both of them higher. Rob's fire challenged Ron's calm. It made him take risks he might have walked away from. And in return, Ron's precision and discipline gave Rob's wild energy direction. Together they kept each other balanced, two sides of the same creative coin, pushing and grounding one another in ways only they could understand. Both men kept each other grounded, Rob through fire, Ron through focus. They balanced each other perfectly, even when they didn't realize it. Each one represented something the other resisted, but secretly needed. Looking back, Ron would later open up with a painful honesty that came far too late to reach the person it was meant for. He said softly, "We didn't always agree, but he made me better. Maybe I never told him that." Those words carried years of silence, decades of shared glances, creative tension, and mutual respect that neither ever put into words. That confession weighed heavy on him. It was the kind of truth that only hits after the moment to say it is gone forever. All the unspoken exchanges between them, those half-smiles on set, those quiet observations during each other's success, suddenly meant everything. Two giants of storytelling, speaking different creative languages, but chasing the same fragile truths about love, family, identity, and the legacies they'd leave behind. By early 2026, the rest of the world had moved on, because it always does. But Ron hadn't. Time kept marching forward. Yet Rob's absence stayed loud, echoing through every quiet moment of Ron's days. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was haunting. It carried the sound of unfinished conversations, unsent messages, and the constant ache of regret. Friends close to Ron say he's been writing something deeply personal during this time. Not a big studio blockbuster, not a glossy Hollywood production built to impress, but something real, stripped down and searching. A story about two creators circling the same truth, confusing reflection for rivalry, and mistaking distance for disagreement. It's not just another film, it's therapy in motion. A piece of art shaped by grief, honesty, and a painful kind of clarity that only loss can bring. And maybe through this story, Ron is finally saying everything he never got the chance to tell Rob. When someone asked Ron point-blank if his new story was about Rob, he didn't rush to answer. He just paused, eyes heavy with memories, before finally saying, "It's about losing the one person who understood you, even when you didn't always understand each other." That single line hit harder than any tribute could. It sliced straight to the heart of everything left unsaid between them. The regrets, the pride, the quiet love that never needed words. This story doesn't wrap up with some shiny Hollywood ending or easy redemption. It dares to stay real, because life doesn't always give you closure, it gives you reflection. What Ron finally learned was that legacy isn't built from trophies or perfect moments, it's built from connection. From the people who test us, challenge us, and force us to grow, even when it hurts. In the months following his quiet confession, Ron retreated from the spotlight, not out of defeat but out of reflection. The man who once lived by studio schedules and production deadlines started waking up without alarms, walking through empty sets, and listening to the echoes of his own thoughts. For the first time, he wasn't chasing perfection, he was chasing peace. He began reconnecting with the roots he'd buried under decades of work. Old reels, handwritten notes from his early days, even faded photos of the Andy Griffith Show, they all resurfaced as pieces of a puzzle he was finally ready to face. Sources close to him said he'd spend hours in his office with the lights low, rewatching his own films, not for pride but for understanding. Each frame carried a message he hadn't noticed before. Tiny reflections of himself hidden in every story he'd ever told. And somewhere in that process, something shifted. Ron started showing up unannounced at small film schools, sitting quietly in the back during student screenings. When students realized who he was, they'd go silent. But Ron would just smile and say, "Keep creating. Don't wait for perfect. Just tell the truth." That line became his new mantra. Hollywood insiders whisper that his latest project, still untitled, isn't about fame or success at all. It's about forgiveness. A stripped-down story of two men who spent their lives searching for meaning in the noise of achievement, only to find it in the stillness that followed. It's not the Ron Howard the world grew up watching. It's the Ron who finally stopped running. The one who learned that real greatness isn't in the applause, it's in the courage to face the silence afterward, and to keep creating even when no one's watching. As word spread about Ron's mysterious new project, the buzz in Hollywood started to build, but not in the usual red carpet kind of way. This time it wasn't about who was starring in it or how much it cost. It was about why he was making it. Those close to him said the film felt almost like a confession, a message not to the audience but to himself. People who've seen early footage describe it as hauntingly intimate. No flashy effects, no big-name cast, just raw emotion framed through quiet moments. One scene reportedly shows an aging filmmaker walking through a soundstage filled with old props from his past work. He touches each one gently, like he's saying goodbye, not just to his movies but to the man he was when he made them. Industry insiders say it's the most personal thing Ron has ever done, something he wouldn't have dared to create 20 years ago. It's less about storytelling and more about soul-searching, exploring how creativity can both heal and destroy. The script blurs the line between memory and imagination, with whispers that certain scenes mirror his friendship and rivalry with Rob Reiner. But Ron hasn't confirmed that. He just smiles and says, "Some stories don't need names." What makes this film different isn't its scale, it's its honesty. There's no filter, no Hollywood shine, just truth carved straight from experience. And for a man who built his entire career on structure and control, letting the mess show feels revolutionary. Those who've read the script say the final scene leaves the audience breathless. A simple exchange between two men who finally understand each other too late. No dramatic score, no applause, just silence. The kind of silence that says everything words never could. When the lights finally dimmed on the premiere of Ron's new film, the crowd didn't cheer right away. They just sat there, quiet, stunned, taking it all in. The story wasn't meant to entertain, it was meant to unravel you, and when the credits rolled, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Ron didn't walk the carpet that night or pose for cameras. He slipped out a side door, hand in hand with Cheryl, disappearing into the night like a man who had finally said what he needed to say. Critics called it a goodbye without words, a letter to the past, and the film only Ron Howard could make. But for Ron, it wasn't about reviews or awards, it was closure. A full-circle moment after a lifetime of chasing truth through lenses and scripts. The boy from The Andy Griffith Show had become the filmmaker who dared to expose his heart on screen. No filters, no masks, just raw humanity. Sources say that in his final message to the cast and crew, Ron wrote, "Perfection fades, but honesty stays forever." And maybe that's the real legacy he leaves behind. Not the fame, not the trophies, but the courage to show vulnerability in a world built on illusions. His film isn't just a tribute to Rob Reiner. It's a message to everyone who's ever lost someone who shaped them, challenged them, or saw them when the world didn't. It's a reminder that connection outlives competition, and that silence, when shared, can be louder than applause. So if Ron's journey hit you right in the heart, don't just scroll away, hit that like button, subscribe to stay tuned for more powerful stories like this, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. Tell us who's that one person in your life who truly understood you.